Happy November LegRep Network meeting. We've got this one and one more left in the 2023 calendar year, if you can believe that. It's almost 2024. Really appreciate you all being here tonight. We're going to focus on the 2024 legislative priorities, talk a little bit about strategy. I really want to get some feedback from you all as you think about your own school board or school district's priorities, how those priorities align with or contrast with the WSSDA priorities, and how you all are thinking about navigating that. I'd also like to know if you're hearing anything about any of the 4 buckets of priorities from our LEG document. And then I'd also like to know a little bit about how we can help you elevate some of the priorities on our own document and maybe your own. She will be joining us here shortly, but I wanted to let you all know that Marissa Beard, who is a school board member with the Tumwater School District, as well as the incoming vice president of the WSSDA board, is also a new contractor with WSSDA, working with me directly to help unpack and understand the very complex K-12 funding and finance system. And so she's planning on popping on tonight and listening in, getting some feedback from you all about what are some helpful tools for you as you try to understand yourself the complexities of the funding system, the school finance system, and how can we help you to explain it better to your legislators. You may be aware that a lot of your legislators have so many things on their plate, and they may not quite understand all of the complexities of the school funding situation. And so it's really hard to change what we don't understand. So we're trying to help you and them understand it better so we can advocate to change it or improve it, if you will. So with that, I am going to share my screen. Hopefully you all have received the legislative priorities documents in maybe more than one way. It's gone out in a couple different ways. I have sent it to our legislative committee members who have some tools and resources to then be able to send it out to their school board, the school board members in their director area. So maybe you heard from them, that would be cool. Hopefully you at the very minimum got it from our communications team through last week's member update. I think that either went out on Thursday or Friday. So it was at the very top there. And now I'm going to help you figure out how you can find it on your own in case you lose track in either of those communications. So if you just go to the WSSDA homepage and go under strategic advocacy, it's the very first sub-bullet, legislative priorities. That's all you got to touch there. And I'm really proud of this legislative priorities document for several reasons. First and foremost, it's very consistent with the 2023 legislative priorities. I think that's really important for our legislators to see and hear from us, that we are consistent from year to year, that we have some very key and important issues at the forefront of our advocacy messaging, and that we recognize that we're not going to get all of the things that we want in a single legislative session, and that this is a long game. So I was really pleased to see in the prioritization from members, school districts that submitted their priorities, our top 4 were the exact same from last year, just in a different order. So that's really interesting, really good. And we had more school districts submit priorities this year than last year. We had 87 total school districts submit. Again, I won't be satisfied until we get 295, but at least we're increasing our numbers. Attendance in General Assembly was at 178. That's an all-time high. Now we're at a higher number than ever before with our prioritization. So we're moving in the right direction. So when you get to this web page, you can click on this button here and it'll open it up as a PDF, and then you can print it. But the nice thing about having it here online is if you're communicating with your legislators, you can merely just send them a message and embed this link to them. Although my only caution to that is that in a world full of emails in an inbox, it might be very hard for them to make time to click on that link. So sometimes even providing a hyperlink and attaching it to the email so it's easy to open up, a little less step-by-step process would be helpful to you. And then, of course, if you have an opportunity to meet with them face-to-face or schedule a Zoom meeting, you could do something similar with them as I'm doing with y'all tonight, kind of walk them through the actual web page. Again, because knowing how many organizations are communicating with them and how many organizations have a legislative priority document, to whatever degree you can lead them to the document and it be a more active communication, the more likely it is that they're going to be able to spend some time with it. So you're really responsible for making sure it's unpacked beyond just an email link. So I want to just take this in 4 different chunks. So we're going to start with this first one. This was far and away the number 1 priority, and it was the amply funded staffing levels was number 1. Special education was far and away number 1 last year, and I think it's interesting they traded spots. And my guess is that because there was significant funding allocated to special education last year, while it doesn't go all the way to meeting the needs of our students and our staff and our schools, at least it was something, whereas there wasn't much, if anything, addressed in funded staffing levels. And so that elevated to the top. So not a huge surprise. And I think it makes a lot of sense that it's up here. There were quite a few other related positions that were prioritized sort of in that top 12. And so when meeting with the legislative committee to determine what do we put in this top bucket beyond just staffing, because it's really about ample and equitable and consistent or stable funding for our schools, what are we going to put in here to make it all relevant and top of mind? So if we unpack this, we try to make these documents as concise as possible because that encourages readership, but also this first one has a lot in it. So you'll note that the amply funded staffing level position is here, elevated in the top. Funding for career and technical education was also within the top 12. The brand new position around transition to kindergarten programming, the way that the language of that position is stated is WSSDA will oppose any sort of backsliding or proposed legislation that would backslide on that funding. I wanted to put this in a more positive frame. So I said basically that that legislation would maintain the programming as it currently exists and gives you all some flexibility. No more changing this up is what we would be advocating for. This was also in one of our top 2 priorities last year, addressing the regionalization factor gaps, as well as the salary rebasing issues, both of which are outlined with some recommendations in the K-12 Basic Education Compensation Advisory Committee. There is an actual position that references this. That was also newly adopted this session.
You have to meet this basic criteria. So once everyone is
and made it into the top 12 this year. So I thought that was interesting. And then also levy and LEA funding, again, essentially a hold harmless and try to equal and stabilize things for school districts that are disproportionately impacted by state dollars, the levy equalization funding. So there's a lot in there. And so by just merely giving something like this to your legislator, a lot of this may get passed up. So I think it's really important to name the things that are important, particularly if any one or more of these align with your own district priorities. So I'm just going to pause and I'm going to leave it up because it might be nice to reference, but I'd just love to hear from all of you. Are you having conversations with your legislators about any of these particular areas? And what have you heard from your legislators about sort of willingness to respond in this session or in future sessions? And while you're thinking, I will just tell you that one of the more prominent conversations that I'm hearing right now is about increasing the basically the salary or hourly wage of paraeducators. And that is a priority of the Washington Education Association, WEA, as well as Superintendent Chris Reichdahl. It was in their budget request package. And so that sort of fits within the idea of additional staffing or funding for staff. However, there hasn't been as much conversation around whether or not they're going to bake that into the prototypical funding model. And that's really where we're advocating. If there's going to be any sort of changes to funding related to staff, that it is adjusted within the prototypical school funding model so that it's a permanent shift. In addition to that, we would ask that we support the idea of salary increases for paraeducators as part of this, but we would like to see it extended to all classified staff, because as I'm sure many of you are well aware, if one member of a particular salary group gets a salary increase, undeniably so and rightfully so, the other members of that group will advocate for equitable salary increase for themselves. So we would like to see this expand to classified staff and baked within the prototypical school funding model. I haven't heard anything about the transition to kindergarten programming being messed with. And in terms of regionalization and LEA, the most that I've heard are from legislators who are hoping just in this 2024 legislative session, possibly to have a hold harmless. Don't see any major policy changes in this session, but their hope is that no district will be negatively impacted by changes and adjustments in this legislative session. So those are some of the key things I'm hearing. I'm curious what you are hearing along the same lines, different lines, or any of these topics listed in this section. Anybody hearing anything? And if you'd like to chat, just chat. You can just unmute and say something.
So this is Kathy from Walla Walla, and I'm off camera because I'm cooking.
Nice.
So something that's similar and related, but not specific to what you stated, Walla Walla is working with legislators to fix the experience factor. So there was quite a few districts that were impacted by the changes in experience factor. So we actually are writing a bill to change that, and we're working with some legislators on that as well. So I will give you an update when I have it. We've reached out to quite a few people, and we have Marie, who is our lobbyist, who is, doing all the heavy work for that. I've only been in one meeting due to my work, so I can't really speak to how that's going, but it does sound like they're interested. And the way we've written it, it seems like it would also not increase any budget issues. So basically, it's going to hold harmless and change it so it's yearly, and that it's going to come in before our budgets are due, so that we don't get blindsided by any changes year to year, or like for 3 years. Like they always give it to us after our budgets are due, and then it's like for 3 years. And so we're going to try to do it year to year, but come in before budgets are due. So there's a lot to it, and I'll get back to you guys on that, but it looks really positive and we'd love your support.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kathy. I appreciate you reminding me of that. I did talk with Marie last week about it, and she had mentioned that a previous version of that bill that she had sent me had actually been revised a little bit. So yeah, would love to see it when it's available, and hope that we can get behind it. Is it your understanding or assessment that our member adopted priorities would align with what your district and other districts are proposing, so that we could rally around it and be supportive?
As far as I'm seeing, yes. I'm on legislative committee, so I'm familiar. Yeah. So I think that it would be something that WSSDA and all of us could get behind. I also am kind of waiting for all the final. We're waiting on some budget stuff so that we can make sure that it is going to be not increase any budgets, and we like at the legislative level, because we don't want that to happen. We pretty much feel like it's going to be like a leveling thing with the budget, so that it wouldn't cause some of our legislators who are concerned about budget increases. So yeah, but we're still waiting on some feedback on that, but we're working on it, as I know. And I know that you'll hear from Marie as well, and I'll make sure that she reaches out to you. And then as I get more information, I'll let everybody know.
Great. Thanks so much, Kathy. Appreciate that. Anybody else have some updates about this particular area? maybe instead of everybody going around, if one or more of these issues, I have to believe this is true, is also in your district's legislative priorities. So not all districts have their own legislative priorities, but a lot do. And so I'd just be curious if WSSDA's legislative priorities support and align with your district's legislative priorities. And if so, would you just put yes in the chat? And then I will be able to mark that there's some consistent alignment with school district priority documents as well. That's great, because that means we both can sing the same song when we're having conversations with legislators. And then I'm gonna just plant this question, and then we'll come back to it at the end. Marissa Beard has joined us. Hi, Marissa, thanks for being here. I already introduced you in your role, and that you would be here listening in to help to understand what our members might need in order to build responsive materials based on their feedback. So the question would be, as it relates to the topics baked into this category, what would be most helpful for you from WSSDA for you to understand these issues, and or for you to be able to explain them to your legislators? And I will tell you that the thing Melissa and I are working on, because Melissa has deep insight and brains behind the complex school finance system. She is meeting with one of our other contractors who does work around sort of visual imagery to help understand complex issues. So they're going to be interviewing Melissa to expel her knowledge and then build some tools and materials that can help explain school finance. So that is something that we'll be working on. How many of those tools and materials will be available before the 2024 session, I do not know. Probably not all the ones that we'll want or we'll see in the next year, but at least we can start. And so it would be interesting to know what would be most important to you to have first. So that being said, I'll just look in the chat, see if any of you have any comments, but otherwise go ahead and be thinking about that. And maybe that'll be the last question I ask at the end. Okay, so let's move on to special education. We can always come back if you think of something later. So as you are well aware, this was our #1 priority last session. We made big moves on it. I think that was first and foremost because it was a collaborative and unified priority of the education stakeholders across the board. So it was WSSDA, it was AWSP, it was WEA. We were, again, all singing the same song. And I think it not only push the legislature to pay attention to this, but also so many of our legislators are cognizant of the fact that not all of our students are getting the supports and services that they need because of a lack of resources. And they also, from what I understand, realize that funding is being taken from other areas in order to provide the necessary and ethical services that school districts are required to provide. So again, we haven't gone all the way. We still need more. I have not heard any indication that there will be big moves on adjusting the multiplier again, because they adjusted it last year. My guess is they'll leave it for now. I have heard rumblings that several legislators will be pursuing removal of the cap. So it moved up to 15% from 13% last year. That helps a lot, but it doesn't go all the way. So OSPI in their priorities document and budget request, and then multiple other organizations and individual school districts have asked for a full removal of the cap. Depending on who I talk to, I have had legislators tell me that's not going to happen. And I've also had legislators tell me it has to happen. So we'll see who's right about that and where that lands. I don't know if we'll see a bill. I think we would have to see a bill in order to test that out. And I haven't heard of any bill sponsors to that end yet. So I will keep you posted, but would love to hear if you know something. And then last but not least, I wanted to let you know that Kelsey Hamilton, who is a school director out of the Chehalis School District, is working on a bill with Senator Braun that would eliminate the penalties that some school districts are charged when you submit safety net funding application information and it is sent back to the district saying there was an error, you don't get the money. And OSPI has made a lot of strides to remove that obstacle, recognizing that that funding is designed to go to students and many of those errors can be corrected. I think some strides have been made, although I haven't heard directly from school districts about any shifts in that, so that would be helpful. But recognize that there are still some school districts that would like the opportunity to be able to access those dollars and receive help and technical support to improve or correct any application errors that they have. So Senator Braun will be sponsoring that. He's working with Senator Wellman to bring a bill forward, and I think we'll have a lot of support there. OSPI did provide their feedback and will also be supportive. So the train's moving in the right direction on that one, and it's a nice little bill that doesn't cost school districts money and could go a long way to help a few or more. So that's the kind of bill you see in a 2024 supplemental legislative session be successful, because it's bipartisan. It doesn't require a big fiscal note, and it won't cost that much money. I mean, it's money that's already allocated and waiting in the coffers for school districts. So it's just sensible legislation. So those are the things that I've heard and know. What are you hearing or know in this space from your legislators? Any conversations that have gone on that you would be willing to share?
Hi, Marissa. This is Sarah from Shoreline.
Hi, Sarah.
Hey, I'll just share that in a conversation with one of our senators. He raised this as well, indicating he had heard possibly some conversation around this as well. This is Senator Stanford. And he wanted to understand, like, what is that remaining gap for fully funding special education, and had requested more information on costs, as well as understanding. We explained with him how part of the picture here is also the increasing costs that we're seeing around services, not just our staffing, but just that there's a broad spectrum of costs that we're looking at here. And he was really engaging in that conversation. So it sounded like he was looking at more than just safety net or the 15%. He was interested in really understanding that full picture.
Nice. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Sounds like in that question, or in that conversation, something that would be helpful is from a statewide perspective, how big is that gap? What's that number moving forward?
Yeah, and I know that the that data dashboard that WSSDA collaborated on last year was so effective in communicating that. Is there intention to try to update that with New Year's numbers to maintain that as we continue?
I will look into it. I think that's a great idea.
Awesome, thanks.
If the brain behind that operation is willing to do so. That's Rob Perkins, who is a school director out of Evergreen School District, in partnership with Daniel, our data geek, also known as an accountant for WSSDA. Any other things that y'all are hearing? Okay, I'm gonna put in the chat just said, so that it's a line in the chat marker, and then I would ask if you have legislative priorities for your own district, and any one of these topics within special education is in your priorities, if you would type yes in there, that would be helpful. Great, thank you. I'm just looking back at some notes. Larry's got to go for some school board meeting. Okay, Larry, we will allow it. Thanks for being here while you could, and hope you have a good school board meeting. And then Sarah, Sarah says regionalization and adjacent are missing letters in the text on the webpage. Look at those eagle eyes. Okay, I will talk to, yes, I will talk to Sean about that. Good eye. Thank you, Sarah. Adjacent, I wonder if that was like a copy and paste problem. Adjacent and regionalization on website. Great. Thank you so much. Okay. I am going to, oh, Jane, you've got a comment?
Yeah, our district is still working on our list as far as our legislative priorities. But one of the things that's been asked for the last several years, which is, I don't know if it's just unique to Bellevue or a district, or this is something that is an issue with other school districts, which is that cost of housing is so outrageous that majority of our 0 to 5, actually not majority, all of our 0 to 5 year certificate of staff lives outside the district, anywhere from 1 to 2 to 3 school districts away. And so one of the brainstorming that has been happening is to see if it's possible to build housing, subsidized housing on school property so that staff could live within the district. It just right now, in nowhere in near future can we have staff live within the district. And it's not just teachers, it's other service areas as well. None of our firefighters live in our district. It just goes on and on. And so I'm curious to know whether or not other districts are having similar issues as we are.
They definitely are. I've heard about it from our island districts. I think I saw TJ was on here. Definitely a challenge. I'm sure all of you have some form of this. Anybody want to respond to Jane with a shared problem and maybe a solution that you all have tried?
This is Larry Garcia from Montana School District. Being on the reservation, we have hardly any housing out here at all. Most of our people come in from other districts, like she was saying, Yakima area, maybe Wapto, Toppenish, or even down as far away as Sunnyside, which is about 40 miles away. So you're not alone. It's an issue nationwide, basically everywhere, for small school districts that they just don't have it, and there's no funding for it on the state level that I know of. But if you did it, you'd have to do it on your own. We're on the reservation. Some reservations do have housing on their school properties or in the area that they own for their teachers, because they live so far away, especially down in New Mexico, Arizona area. And they're able to get funding from down there from the state for this. But it's hard. It's hard for our small school district like we are. I'd love to be able to put some housing out here for our teachers, but I just can't afford it.
I'm wondering if we have a legislation that supports and allows districts, as we, especially as a lot of the districts are looking at rebuilding their infrastructure, to have a legislation which permits, in conjunction to build housing to support staff. If that would be something that would be favorable to your district and other districts as well.
Yeah, and that out here just trying to find the land to build on it, because most of it is reservation land. So, and if you did something with the tribe and then you're using state money, it's just not going to happen, because you can't do a lease. You have to own it outright. So it's tough. It's tough out here.
I'll chime in from Walla Walla. It's a big issue in Walla Walla as well, because most people who are, middle class are being priced out of housing. And I know that some of the, we're this tiny little town, a small little community, and we have 3 universities, higher education schools, and Whitman College is actually buying up property and land to actually build homes for their professors because they're having trouble finding places to live in our community as well. It is a huge issue when we're hiring for principals and administrators, because a lot of them come from outside our district, and we've had some of them say we can't find housing or something that we would want that we could live in, and so they don't apply here. So it's become an issue. And then, you know, we're adjacent to the Tri-Cities area, Pasco, Kennewick, and Richland, and housing there is not as high. There's more abundance there. And so we have lost some great teaching staff and administrators to the Tri-Cities. So it is an issue out here as well. I think it's an issue that goes beyond just school districts. You know, we're putting together a land trust in Walla Walla area as well, so that we can do some more affordable housing. It's something that should be at the forefront of our legislature. So if there's any way that we can support it as school board directors, that would be amazing. Maybe that's something that we need to make as somehow put into our priorities, because it is not going to go away until we're able to fix some of these housing issues. And, you know, we have 19 classified paraeducator positions open in our district, and we cannot fill them. We have 3% unemployment right now in our district, and we have nobody to fill those positions. We have no subs at this point. We're using certificated staff to fill classified staff subbing, which is really crazy. And visited a school today where I know that they needed some support and they couldn't get subs in there. And, you know, I'm like, oh, wait, I have a teaching degree, so I could jump in, but I can't because I'm a school board director. So, you know, it's definitely an issue that I would support, and I think my district would support as well.
Yeah, y'all are bringing up a really interesting point. This isn't the first time. This has been an emerging issue that we've talked about before. And I will do another review of our existing positions, but I don't know that we have any positions that specifically call out support or advocacy for this particular issue. I think it would be we wouldn't be opposed to it, but I don't know that we could be out in front of it. But maybe as it becomes an increasing issue, we need to. You know, we are supporting obviously increase in staff salaries with these positions up here and healthy school buildings, but that doesn't get to the housing issue, which is a priority of our legislature. It's one of their top priorities, and I don't know how significantly that might impact districts directly. So this is a big issue we should definitely keep discussing.
Yeah, I was told by Senator Patty Cooter that there is a bill on that is, I think it was introduced last year, that they're looking at modifying and possibly looking at adding some lines to permit something like this to occur on public land and school district properties. And so I haven't gotten the details yet. I forwarded the information to our executive staff. I'm waiting to hear back to see, you know, if we're looking at, you know, what is the most pertinent things. Is this our most pertinent thing? It sounds like it is. It's been something that has been shared with us by our staff at large through surveys as being a priority. But like I said, I'm still waiting on our staff. So I just wanted to let you know that there is something there that we could possibly work with.
That's great. Thank you. And as that comes your way, will you send it to me, Jane, as you become aware of any proposed legislation?
Sure, will do.
Thanks. Great. Okay, we've got just a little over 20 minutes left, so I'm going to move on through here because we really want to get to what can we do for you at the end of this. School construction is consistently on our top priorities list. I hope someday it won't be on here because we will have resolved all the issues for it, but it's an easy ask for us every year, especially given the Wahkiakum decision. The legislature is very clear that there is a problem, and this Wahkiakum decision did not necessarily help school districts, obviously. So we're still looking at it. I will tell you that OSPI has rulemaking authority currently to adjust the SCAP formula. So they actually establish the square foot price per square foot ratio in rulemaking process, which they will be opening up. And that rulemaking process will be open during the legislative process, a little bit as a challenge to the legislature. Currently, the price per square foot is right around the 250 to 300 range. And the ratio or the square footage that they're looking at is more around 950. So that's definitely going to turn some heads. Essentially, what that means is if that rulemaking did go into effect, it would put the state on the hook to pay for that if a school district was able to pass a bond. But then we still have that issue, of course. So I think we're going to see some tension between OSPI and some of the legislature about whether or not OSPI has rulemaking authority to do that, and whether or not the legislature will pay for it if it goes into effect. Similarly, I have heard yet again that there are some legislators entertaining the idea of a 55% supermajority bill. They might refer to it as a simple majority, but there's only one simple majority. It's 50% plus one. That's what our positions say we would support. So we'll have to really walk the line on this, recognizing that if there were actually movement to move from 60% to 55%, it's a long game in an election year. It'd have to go to the ballot of the people. So it would be a big lift. It would help some school districts at a time when many of our school districts have not been able to pass bonds. But it doesn't go all the way to meeting what our positions actually say, which is simple majority. So we'll see if that actually comes to fruition. Last session was a big win for the Small Schools Modernization Grant. It basically moved almost full funding for the districts that had projects on the list. But that caps out at school districts who have 2,000 students or less. You may remember that we had a new position proposal that passed during General Assembly this year that would allow us to advocate for that Small Schools Modernization Grant program to be accessible to school districts that have 3,000 students or less. I actually have heard that there are some legislators who would consider that move, and we'll just see if that's a possibility here in this legislative session. Representative Joel McIntyre has had a bill last session, 1044, that gave some opportunities for small school districts that were having hard times passing bonds to be more able to access the SCAP program. And it made it a long way, and it has a good chance of seeing all the way through. So some of our small schools, I think, would really benefit from that. Trying to see what else is in here. The comprehensive school safety position was in the top 6, I think it was. So it's reflected with relevant staff training, I think most specifically around isolation and restraint. If you remember last session, there was a bill that went pretty far. Our positions weren't explicit to isolation and restraint. We did weigh in supportively of the bill from the comprehensive school safety perspective. Now we have more explicit language that will allow us to play a more active role in that. And the fact that comprehensive school and student safety was prioritized, I think we'll see that bill move this year in some form or fashion. And first and foremost, I can't imagine it being successful without funding allocated for professional learning and training for educators. So I think that will be a priority, particularly of Representative Santos and Senator Wellman coming out of the education committees. And then I think we'll also see some bills come back on student voice and parent rights, and we have positions that allow us to have some perspective on that when the legislature brings them to a hearing. So those are a bunch of positions in one. Again, anything that you all are hearing specific to these topic areas from your legislators?
Marissa, from South Kitsap, I've had a couple conversations because we're running a bond tomorrow, and we're all on pins and needles. Our youngest school is 35 years old, and
wow.
and we haven't passed a bond in 35 years. So
goodness.
just some conversation on how important it is to hopefully someday lower below 60 and get it to the 50%. And how important this is for every school district. And I'll keep up those conversations. They've been more toward, let's hope our bond passes, that kind of conversation, but I'll continue that after, with the hope it passes.
We will hope the same for you, Kate.
Thank you.
Can you tell us, maybe you don't know this off the top of your head, but if you do, that'd be cool. Last time you ran a bond, failed. What percentage did it fail at?
The last two that we have run that have failed, because again, we haven't passed one in 35 years. We were, if I remember off the top of my head, one was like 57%. And I do believe the last one was almost 59.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So a move to 55% would have been wonderful for you.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we'll take anything if we can kind of stair step it all the way down, but I don't think anybody's going to gripe if we get it down to 55.
Yeah. Yep. That makes good sense. Great. Thank you. Anybody else hearing anything?
No, but I'd like to say something on that for those of us, again, in small schools, rural schools, whatever. We don't have the bonding capacity. Even if we did pass the bond, we don't have enough money in the bond to even do anything with. My capacity for my school district is only $8 million. That's it. $8 million. And what, you can't do anything with $8 million. I mean, you can max out your SCAP, but still you're going to come up very short. The whole way that the state does this, I can't think of the word I'm trying to think of building schools in small rural schools. How do you do it? You don't have the capacity to do it. The whole formula for school construction needs to be revamped, I think. The larger school districts, they have the bonding capacity to do that. But like everybody else, trying to pass a bond it's tough. It's really hard. I just think the legislators need to look at the overall construction side of it for large schools, middle schools, and the small schools, because we're not all the same. We're always treated the same, but that's not what it is. I don't know. I get frustrated when we try to talk about construction, because it seems like it's an uphill battle for everybody. Thanks.
It doesn't just seem that way. It really is that way. It is an uphill battle. Yes, I heard someone.
Yes, Sherry Kelly from Arlington. We're looking at running our school bond for a new middle school in February. So we did when we went to the WSSDA meeting, that sounded like it was a good time of year. And if we don't hit the mark, we're looking at running it again, whatever, in April, like 2 months later. So yes, this is very much at the forefront of our mind in our district. This will be our 5th attempt. So Kate, you give me perspective, like, hey, what are you whining about? I mean, it's not 35 years, but the school is 1981. There's a list off many things that need to happen, and we need a new school. My thinking though, Marissa, is I'm wondering, and anyone else, that if I'm not doing an ask to the legislature for money, right? Because we talked about last time, it's a short session. I'm not asking for money, but I would love to see a legislator write a bill on bringing this to a simple majority, or like you said, 55%. I'd rather go for the 50+1, because I mean, that's what we're really aiming for. But that would be my intention. I'm not asking for money, just bring it down on a scale that some of us, unlike our other friend there at the, that district. But I think that's something that should be doable. And I would love to pull other districts together to find bipartisan support to write a bill like that.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments, Sherry. My understanding is that there is an opportunity for us to get bipartisan support at 55%, but many of our legislators aren't willing to go down to 50%. And that is a bummer because it's going to take a lot of political capital to move to 55%, right? And then once, if that were even a chance for it to go through the legislature, for there actually to a bill to make it all the way through, then you got to have a 2/3 vote. Then you got to change the constitution, and then it's got to go to a vote of the people, right? And there's a lot of other things they're considering here in the course of 2024. So it's a big year, and a lot of people running for office. So anyway, I agree with you fully, and it'll be interesting to see if the 55% even gets any traction this session. So I'll keep you posted. Okay, I'm going to move on to the last one because we're almost out of time. So I would like for you, again, like we have before, if you have legislative priorities for your own district and they align with the build safe and healthy schools, if you would put yes in the chat. Oh, wait, don't do it yet. Wait, don't do it yet. Let me put construction. That will help me. There. If you did already, go ahead and do it again. Then it'll remind me that I drew the line in the chat. I really love seeing in so many situations that the WSSDA priorities also align with your school district priorities. It seems to be pretty consistent. So that is a very good thing. Okay, last but not least, transportation and school meals. I was trying to make this a more concise document. I was like, how can I make those related? And it became fairly obvious. They are supports and services that your school district provides in order for students to access basic education. So they're not direct instruction, but they are critically important for students to be able to successfully learn, even to be able to get to school, and then once they get there to be able to focus and learn. So made moves on the school meals. That was a priority of ours again last year. Moved up to part of elementary school, but not all the way. My understanding is Representative Richelli, who was the champion for this last session, will probably bring forward a bill to move it all the way to 12th grade. Unlikely for that to happen in this session. I think the state legislature is looking for additional support from the federal government. But I have heard, again, you hear things and who knows what will actually happen, but I have heard that there will be more of a will amongst the legislative body to move it through all students on an elementary school campus. So that one I see is palatable for the legislature, because while there is a cost, it means every student on the elementary campus is able to access this benefit. And it's not as expensive as going all the way through grade 12. And a big ticket item, which I would be surprised to see it pass in a supplemental session, but I do know there is a great will of Senator Wellman to bring the transportation bill back, which would adjust the STARS formula to be responsive to the actual cost of school districts. So I talked with the folks over at OSPI today. They are working with Senator Wellman's office to get numbers there. And so I know that this is a passion project for Wellman. I don't think she'll rest until she sees some movement on it. It will be interesting to see how much movement is possible in this legislative session. But we will definitely see a bill and have ample opportunity to weigh in on that. So what are you hearing? What do you think you know about this? I'd be curious.
Hey Marissa, it's Sarah again from Shoreline. Not necessarily something I'm hearing, but something that I'm wondering about as we've been talking about increasing costs and inflationary factors is how fluctuations in fuel pricing can be considered as a part of that STARS formula reimagining. Because my concern is that there'll be a concerted effort to like rework the formula as a whole and possibly not have that long-term sight or foresight around that fluctuating cost, which we know is fairly volatile and doesn't appear to be stabilizing anytime soon. So just curious if that had been part of the conversation, and if not, if we could introduce that as part of the conversation.
It's a really great point. I will ask that question, and if all of you could also be elevating it in your conversations as well as a reminder, that would be important. So thanks for bringing that to our attention. I'll actually shoot an email to our peeps over at OSPI tonight, Sarah, and I'll get back to y'all.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else y'all want to share about what you're hearing as it relates to transportation or school meals? Okay, I'm going to put transportation in the chat. If it's one of your school district priorities, will you put yes? And then I'll do school meals next after I take a pause. Wow. Look at that. Oh, so many needs. Okay, now Kathy said yes. Okay, I'm gonna do a countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, now I'm gonna do school meals. If school meals is on your district's legislative priorities, please put yes. Oh yes, Kate says. Heck yeah. We got a lot of work to do, folks. So recognize the needs are immediate. We're gonna probably get some of these things, but not all of them. So thinking about our collective legislative priorities as a long game, I guess my not closing, it won't be the last recommendation I make, but as you're talking with your legislators, hopefully sharing your district and WSSDA priorities, it gives strength to your own district priorities to say, not only are these our priorities, but they are the priorities of our organization representing multiple school districts across the state. And every legislator votes on a final budget. And within that budget, if they are voting supportively of any one of these priorities, they won't just be positively impacting their own constituent districts, but also students and families across the state. So it's an important thing to remember as we look at public education as a system that's not just our own communities, but the system statewide. So the last thing, we only have a few minutes left. I would really love to know as you've tried to communicate these priorities, how have you struggled, and is there something we can do to help you? Most specifically, understanding Marissa Beard's expertise in school finance and ways in which we can communicate to our legislators what the heck school finance is and how it works or doesn't work. What are some high priority areas that you need help explaining to your legislators? And if you don't have a chance to speak out, you can just put it in the chat. We've got a couple minutes here. But while you're thinking, if anybody would like to share something out loud, let's do it.
Marissa, would it ever be possible to do almost like a tutorial? It was to be able to put on something that would be, I hear what you're saying in terms of we have very few minutes to catch the attention, right? There's multiple things there. I have to remember my tunnel is I'm here for education. My legislator is not necessarily. They are multiple things they're attending to. So what I'm thinking is kind of like what you do with onboarding for new school board members. Just something kind of short and sweet. Say, This is the nuts and bolts of school finance. This is why schools want simple majority. This is why they cannot have adequate staffing, because the housing is not priced at a level that people can live at, and therefore be in my community. They have to live several districts away. So I don't know. I just think, think creatively about how we can synthesize our priorities in a way that our legislators are engaged and feel what we feel when we're representing the schools. So we want them to know why they should care. So why do you have to go to the meeting about the seniors? Come on over to us because we're a school and we want, I know they're vying, right? We're vying for their attention, but if WSSDA could think of something like that, I know you have a great group there. Yeah, or collaborate with a WSSDA or one of the other organizations. Right. But yeah, that's what I would say. Make it something succinct, clean, and engaging, and get them excited about why we need this, why this should be a priority.
Great, Sherry. I love that. That's a great idea. And so you're thinking that the audience would be legislators. So we would be doing a tutorial for legislators on school finance.
Yes.
Cool.
I think one of the best things that you can do also is invite them out to your district. Give them a tour of what you have out there. Let them see it with their own eyes, what you have. A lot of times they'll send their representatives. I don't want that. I want them to come out there. You're an elected official just like he is, or she. Have them come out to your district and show them around. I think that's what best thing you can do.
I'll add to that and say that, is there a way to make this formula and everything more simple? Because it seems like it's super complicated if the legislators don't understand it, which I don't know if a lot of them do. And a lot of us board members also struggle in our first few years to understand it, if we ever get it, and then it changes. Like, it just doesn't make sense for it to be that complicated. To me, that means that there's probably problems in there, and it should be a lot more simple. So we need to advocate to our legislator that they need to understand it, so that we understand it, so that our finance directors understand it as well. And that's the biggest priority. And also the fact that the matter is, their paramount duty is to fully fund education, and they're not doing that. That needs to be reiterated in a specific way that is not so direct. I get that it's sensitive to them, but I think in a way to say, hey, let's make this easier for you to fully fund education. Let's make this formula smarter and better and more concise.
Yes. I like it. I will tell you, I think I may have mentioned this at our last LegRep Network meeting, that Representative April Berg, who's a former school director and now is the chair of the Finance Committee, which isn't directly school funding, but it's indirectly school funding because it has to do with tax reform and revenue. She is going to host 2 work sessions during the next legislative session about property taxes and how that is a challenging way to determine how much funding is appropriate for schools to get. So that's going to be in January. And then she's going to host a work session on basically school finance 101 for her own legislators, as well as inviting some of us in. And Melissa may actually end up being one of the panel members of that. So we'll keep you informed, because you'd be able to watch that on TVW. And I think it'll be a good setup for conversations in the next biennium.